What up, Midgard? My name's Daniel Cumming. Welcome once again to the Rune Yoga Embodying Magic podcast. So this is brought to you by runeyoga.org. That's the headquarters for this podcast. So if you ever have any questions that you want to ask me, suggestions for future podcasts, if you just want to get in touch, or if you want to know about more of what I'm doing and what I'm looking at growing, and week by week, month by month, this whole website and the whole idea and concept that I'm looking at growing is going to be more and more on there and on this platform. So runeyoga.org is where you'll find all that. Today, I wanted to pose some questions. So if you've been joining me so far, you know that this probably isn't really the right podcast for you if you're looking for answers, but it definitely is the right podcast for you if you're looking at questioning things more and delving into yourself and the universe, right, into Rune, right? Seek towards the mysteries. So today might be a little bit of a controversial topic, but I urge you, especially if something that I say triggers you a little bit or might be conflicting with your beliefs, just to sit through, because it might make a little more sense and you might see where I'm trying to go with this by the end of the podcast. So the name for the podcast today, I'd like to say it's, what is real, but I suppose in particular what I've been talking about, the runes. So I wanted to say, are the runes real? Is the chakra system real? Is magic real? Is any of this sort of stuff real? So, astrology, we'll go through the ideas of crystals, Reiki, basically anything that comes to mind during this podcast we're going to talk about. Now, I suppose it sparked because it is a big question. I think an important question when you get into any of this is, am I just deluding myself, casting these spells, working with these runes? And I suppose, where do we start to figure out what is actually real? So I suppose a good place to start might be finding out what the word real actually means. And I think words are really interesting. I love etymology, and that's tracing the origin of where words came from, or, how they came to be and how they've evolved and how we use them today. And words really are just a way of describing something, right? So they can describe something that you can hold, something that, you may not be able to hold, like runes, for example. So something, that you can see, something real, doing little air quotes here with my hands, or something maybe not so real. If you've ever read the book 1984 by George Orwell, it's a perfect example of how words and how changing a society's language can actually affect how a society functions. Because if we, can't express concept or abstract concepts, then, how are we supposed to intellectualize them? How are we supposed to feel into those concepts if we can't actually find words or things to describe it? So the word real, I think, is really interesting because this is what we use, right? Real is right and not real is wrong. So if we can't prove something is real, then it's not, it's not real, right? So I'll bring up the dictionary, see if we can find some meanings for real. So on dictionary.com, we have real as an adjective. So actually existing as a thing or occurring in fact, not imagined or supposed. Okay, well, it doesn't really explain much because, a lot of the things today are imagined first and then they're real. They're actually here. So someone might imagine a car, right? But it's just a bunch of different ideas put together to make something real. Of a thing, not imitation or artificial, genuine. Okay, so the real deal. Here we go. Another definition is real is capable of being detected. So I suppose that's the key, right? It's capable of being detected. I think that's a good way of putting it. Let's put it this way, though. If someone has a psychedelic trip, for example, and they take ayahuasca or DMT, and they start seeing these images, they start seeing all these crazy colors or even maybe more solid images. So that's detectable, right? They can sense that. But because the person next to them who hasn't taken that psychedelic substance, if they can't detect that, so what, is that real? So you've got a 50-50 here. But you might say, okay, that person's taking a psychedelic substance, so what they're seeing is not real because the person in a normal state of being is not seeing that. Okay, so I suppose you could see that again as a split two different ways. So this person that's on a psychedelic substance, say they're seeing all these colors, all these weird different worlds or beings and things like that. Now, are they, through this psychedelic substance, maybe taking the veil away from between them and, say, what people call the spirit world or the astral realm or other worlds or things like that? So is this psychedelic substance actually like taking down the veil to another world? So you could look at it as this influence being real from the outer perspective, or is it just messing with the chemicals inside their body and creating these psychedelic experiences? So they're just pure illusions. So in that point of view, it'd be more of a subjective experience, and everything they're experiencing is just chemical reactions in their body, right? And maybe both are right. So you could see it as they're experiencing some sort of otherworldly event, but the only thing that we can really track is what is happening in their brain. And that's the thing. So I'm personally, as I've mentioned before in a previous podcast, I like to come from the skeptic viewpoint first, okay? And that's not the right or wrong way of doing things. I just think it's the way that I like to build my foundations of how I approach anything with critical thinking, right? I try to come from what I know growing up from science and things like that, but even science is just a perspective. It's a way of understanding things. It can be a very accurate way of understanding things, but it's not perfect. I mean, if you look into quantum physics and quantum mechanics, that just blows a lot of scientific theory out the window. So it's just a current approach that we have. It's one of the best ways to approach things, that we can try to come to some sort of objective understanding of what is, this concept of real. So that relates to everything, I guess. If you're experiencing something like a car, it's very easy to say it's real because it appeals to our five senses. And everyone else can agree that when they look towards the space where the car holds, there's a car there, there's a solid object. You can touch it. You might be able to smell it. You can lick it. You can taste the car. Not sure how that'll go. And you can hear it. You can hear it make sounds when it moves and things like that. Whereas something like, I'm just trying to use an example. So I'll go straight to runes. So I was going to get there anyway. So let's use a rune. Now, with runes, you might say, yeah, they're real because I can see the actual stave. Now, that's just one little bit of the rune. So the runes have a shape. They also have a sound. So you could say that, with urus, the rune urus, you can draw the shape of it. Or you can make the sound called urus. Or it has this ooh sound when you're doing its vocalic resonance sound. It also has a number. But these are all, it has a concept and a meaning. But the actual mystery behind it, when you start to delve into the runes, you can't actually see this concept. Well, some people might get it. Some people might have visualizations and things like that. Whereas the actual mystery of the rune, it's an intangible concept, so you can't hold it. Yes, you could draw or carve the stave, the actual picture, the shape of the visual picture of the rune, but that's not the rune. That's just a description of the concept, which is what words really are. The word car, if you write the word car, that's not the actual car. That's just a few letters mixed together to get across into our consciousness the idea that I'm trying to describe this thing that goes on wheels and takes people places. So that's not the car. It's the same concept with runes. When you see the shape of the rune, that's just the visual interpretation telling you that I'm trying to tell you about Fehu, or I'm trying to tell you about Urus. And the problem is that I don't have the car. I don't have a solid object of a rune for you to hold and prove to yourself. You kind of have to earn it. So it goes through a way of what I like to think of installing software into your body, and that's internalizing concepts. So that's for a whole nother podcast. We'll get into more of that. So let's go through a few different ideas, and let's see how we can actually use critical thinking to, maybe not categorize, but let's see how we can approach spiritualism and things like that in a way of finding out what is real and just exploring that concept. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't have the answers, okay? So I'm just exploring questions, and even my own opinion is always changing and growing and evolving. So a few years from now, I might have a different opinion about all of this, but I really think it's an important question, because when I talk about these kind of things, whether on Facebook or here at the podcast, or, when I give talks and run workshops, I want to get across how I perceive and how I experiencing these things, because I feel like I'm constantly having to explain this to people, because I don't really, in my opinion, I don't really think that when I'm working with chakras, that there's this glowing physical ball of energy in my solar plexus. But I do believe that if I take the time to visualize these different energy centers, whether that's with, chakras, or Dr. Joe Dispenza's work when he talks about the energy centers, or, doing the U work from the 9 Doors Midgard, which is part of a Rune curriculum, I do believe, we'll go back to chakras, so I do believe that if I take the time to repeatedly, and the key is repeatedly, visualize these concepts in my body and associate certain meanings to those concepts, and I use sounds and visualizations and movement and feelings to install that concept in my body, that it goes through my conscious mind into my subconscious mind, so my automated body mind, and feel that chakra or feel that rune instead of thinking and over intellectualizing it, I do believe that it will have an effect on me. So I think there's two ways, the way I see it, to approach things. And as I mentioned with the psychedelic experience, you can see that it's just your psychology. So, your brain, body, thought processes, consciousness, changing your neural programming. So they've done a lot of research around this, and a lot of new stuff is coming out about how we can basically rewire our brain through making new neural patterns and getting our brain to fire in these different ways. And that's by repetition. So we have ways of doing things that we've, unconsciously made patterns. So, we go and we use our toothbrush with a certain hand. We go and have a ritual in the morning where we go and do things. So there's all these patterns, neural pathways, but we can interrupt them and change that neural patterning and even start healing our body. There's been these experiences of people having miraculous healings and all this sort of stuff, so I won't get into too much of that. Dr. Joe Dispenza has some amazing ideas around that and research on that. But that's one way to look at it, right? And I think that's a good place to start, that when I'm using a rune that might be based around health and vitality, I'm low on energy, so I want to use urus to really pick up my vitality. So, for example, I've been really, really sick, with a really bad flu, cold, just bedridden. And within 24 hours, I have to go, and I think this is when I was doing music gigs. So I had to go do a music performance, get up on stage, and I could barely speak. So I carved runes that I believed would heal my body into a carrot, and then because I believed that internalizing those runes, so I carved these runes into a carrot, ate the carrot, and it might just be my whole process of belief that it was going to heal me. I didn't get 100% better, but I was good enough to successfully go and do that performance, right? So you can see that perfectly natural phenomena could have happened. It just could have been towards the end of my, my sickness with that cold or that flu or whatever I had, that bug, and it was naturally going to happen anyway. Or you could say that, maybe I sped up the process because I believed that I was going to get better. Maybe I relaxed a little bit. There's lots of different ways. And I think it's good to think, how did this actually happen? And that's the thing. I don't think when it comes to magic, you can just change the laws of physics like that. I think maybe one day, but for now, you really have to maybe just bend the boundaries a little bit. So yes, I could recover from a cold perfectly normally without the use of any magic or self-belief that I will, but maybe I sped up the process. And maybe I sped up the process by a great deal. But you don't have to believe in any supernatural processes for that to be real, for that to happen. So you could just think that because I convinced myself I was going to get better, then my body's like, okay, I'm going to get better. You know, body's capable of amazing feats. On the other side of things, what if I was to do the same thing, do the same spell? What if I carved those runes into a carrot? And my friend who was in the same position was really sick, bedridden, and they needed to perform the next night. But they didn't even look at the carrot. They were so sick that they didn't even look at the runes down the side of the carrot, ate the carrot, and miraculously got better. Now that gets trickier to explain. Now, if I had told my friend that I had magical powers or could carve runes, and I told them about what I was doing and then I fed them the carrot, you might say that their belief in my ability to do all that magic made them heal themselves, because it's a placebo effect, right? Placebo effect is super powerful. There's heaps of research around that. So you could say that I convinced them to heal themselves through the placebo effect. Now, what if they had no idea what I was doing? I just gave them the carrot. That's harder to explain, and I don't have answers for that. And I want to experiment with those concepts a bit more, but it's a tricky field, because that's the thing. It's hard to replicate experiments with these kind of things, because you might have 2 or 3 people doing the exact same thing, sitting there doing this breathing pattern, meditating. But you don't know what's actually going on in their minds. They could all be doing the same thing. I suppose you could see it one way, like concentration is like a muscle. Some people might have done meditation before and been able to concentrate. You might say that people are on the spectrum towards, some sort of attention deficit disorder. So there's the idea of consciousness is such a variable that it's hard to replicate results. So this is, it's a tricky way to figure out what is real. But we still, in my opinion, need to do it. We still need to ask questions and question things. So I'll bring that into the idea of Reiki. Okay, so I don't have a lot of experience in Reiki. I've done a little bit myself. I've had it done on me. I'm still skeptical about that. And that's the thing. Even though I've had all these amazing experience with runes and magic in general, I believe it can work, okay? From my experience, I believe things like this can work, but I'm still leaning towards more of making it work on yourself and then trickling out into the outside world than making it work on the outside world and then trickling into yourself. So we will get into those. So, if you have a conflicting belief, 1, have an open mind. 2, listen more, because I'm more on the side of, the idea of subjective right now, and I will go into things more of the objective, like the collective unconscious and all those concepts a little bit later. So we're just viewing things from this side for now, more focus on this side. So Reiki, for example, you could say that if you learn Reiki yourself and do it on yourself, then you're using the placebo effect to heal yourself, which is perfectly valid. I'm sure that's fine, and that's a great way that I'm looking at doing it to start off with. I think that's a good way to start. But what if I go and do it on someone else? Again, that's the same concept. Okay, well, they believe that I'm actually doing it on them, so it's a placebo effect, and then that's actually they're healing themselves through the placebo effect. What about these people who might go and do it on someone who's sleeping, who's sick? Or they might do it on someone who's, miles away. And I'm not saying I have records of these things working. I don't. I'm just asking questions. If you are a Reiki practitioner and you do have a strong belief in that your Reiki does work, how do you see it when it relates to doing Reiki on yourself as opposed to how it relates to doing Reiki on other people? When you're doing it with other people, do you tell them that you're doing, what are the your experience, and I want to hear back from you. I want to hear your experiences and the difference of maybe you doing it on Reiki on someone and them knowing about it, that you're doing it. And then, then how does their belief in it affect? If they really believe that it's going to work for them, does it always work for them? Or if they don't believe, they're super skeptical, do you have those people not work very well because they're too skeptical about it and won't work? And how often do you do Reiki on someone that they don't know about? That's a big question, because that's taking out the variables of the subconscious idea and the placebo effect, in my opinion. So that's what I'm really interested in, trying to see how that works as well. Okay, so we can move on to things like crystals. Now, crystals, you can hold them, right? So, of course, crystals are real in the sense that, there are, like the definitions, you can hold them, you can detect them. You can see the crystals, there's different colors, and they might, invoke certain feelings and things like that. But how about the different effects? So how would you test that out? So you say that, I don't know much about crystals, so, if I get these wrong, that's why. Certain meanings and things like that. But you might have amethyst to do with calmness and wisdom or things like that. And certain meanings like rose quartz is associated to love and compassion and things like that. Now, I'm wondering if anyone's done tests before. And not because I'm doubting their ability, because I've got lots of friends that are really into crystals, and they seem to be doing amazing things with their lives. So, if it's making their lives better, then it's real enough for me to believe. But I'm just wondering if, for example, you got 100 people and you gave the 100 people all amethyst in separate rooms and things like that. And then you gave them all rose quartz, and you gave them all something else and something else, something else. And you got them to spend, maybe half an hour or an hour, something with each of these crystals. Maybe take them away for a day at a time or a week at a time. And then just, without them knowing any previous ideas or concepts about what each crystal means, finding out what that means to them. I suppose then, if we're getting all different random ideas, then that concept can be blown out of the water a little bit, because those people are just making random ideas. Everyone's different. But if you get 90% of those people that say that, rose quartz made them feel more compassionate to their loved ones or things like that, then that's something, right? And then I suppose you could go into the idea is it because of its color that makes us, feel a certain way? And if it is its color, does color have a certain vibration that really actually changes our energy field? Or is it just the idea that color is associated with some particular ideal? And that's the thing, where if you look at the NLP, we're very pre-wired to certain concepts when we grow up. We're told as a child that, this kind of thing means this kind of thing means this. And then we just link everything to those branches, and everything just branches off them. So it's just interesting. And again, just asking questions. I just want to encourage a bit more critical thinking around this. If people are making you think more about your belief system, it's one of two things is usually going to happen. You're either going to completely question your belief system, whether it's real or not, and it could crumble and fall apart. If really that's the case, do you really want to spend more time on a belief system that could crumble so easily? I'm saying that because what should happen, in my opinion, if you're really delving that deeply into these kind of spiritual practices, is that you might not have all the answers. Be like, actually, that's a really good question. I can't answer that right now. I'm going to go home and I'm going to, maybe meditate on it, or I'm going to go research or ask other people or practitioners around this question. And that's the problem I feel with most religions. They just have this don't question it policy. No, I think we should question all these things, because if it is such a strong, soul practice, then it should only make us stronger in that belief by questioning it, because we would quest after, quest after more reasons to believe in that concept. And if we can't find that, maybe you should be questioning it yourself. If you can't find the answer to that, or you can't find answers for yourself to want to still believe in that after that question, or if your belief is crumbling, you need to, and again, this is my opinion, but I think you should, start to look into why you do feel that way. And delve more into it. I mean, I feel like a lot of people just, latch onto something and they don't want to question it because they're worried they're going to lose their belief in it. Yeah, that is the case. And there's that whole idea around negative energy, because we humans influence each other so much. I pick up habits of people all the time, and I'm constantly, watching what habits I pick up by certain people and who I hang out with. Some people I love hanging out with, but they've just got habits that I don't want, and, belief systems that I don't want. But in the way that, I suppose, they're stuck in patterns, and we can absorb those patterns. But the idea of questioning your belief system, it shouldn't. Don't let it trigger you too much. If you're really passionate about something, of course it's going to trigger you, and I completely understand. But there is something in that. It's all energy, right? So direct that back into whatever your faith is, whatever your spirituality is, and dig deeper. And then next time someone asks you that question, be like, well, actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because now I have an answer for you. And then, it makes you feel good. There's something in really knowing your stuff around a concept, especially around spirituality. And there's really something in admitting that you don't know the answer. And, that's my problem these days. I feel like a lot of people just don't want to admit they have no idea, right? I mean, I've been studying the runes for quite a while now, but there's some ideas and things that I have no idea about. And that's why I'm making this kind of podcast. I'm hoping that I'll attract people that are interested, or who will ask me questions that might, they might say, oh, no, I don't think you're right about this. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Why? And then they tell me why, and then I might look into that, and then give me a new perspective on the way I look at things. So I'm always keen to challenge my perspectives and grow, and I can't learn everything by myself. Well, I don't think I'll ever learn everything, but I always want to get other people involved. And that's what I'm doing with this podcast. I want to, have conversations with other people, and what I'm doing with runeyoga.org and all these meetings and everything I'm starting to organize in this and these club memberships and things, just get people chatting about all this sort of stuff. So I'll move on to, what else can we move on to? Astrology. So this is a big one. Now, I don't have a real opinion so far, and I don't know a lot about astrology. I have quite a few friends that are really into astrology, and I've had really interesting experiences with it, and some not so interesting experiences with it. So it's a bit hit and miss with me. So if we use the same methods to look at astrology, how can we look at it first? Okay, so what is it based on? So it's based on the planets. So we can see that there's these lights in the sky that are changing. And if we watch, because that's what planets were called originally. Planet meant wanderer in Greek. So planete. It meant wanderer. So it's a wandering star, because they look up in the sky, and because the rest of the stars are so far away, they're not really moving, but these closer stars, wandering stars, that are actually planets, were moving. So that's where the etymology, here we go, words again, of the word planet came. So it's based on these planets and how the idea of their energy moving around Earth affects us as beings. So there's all different theories around this, but the idea, as I understand it from astrology, is when you were born, you imagine that on that place on Earth where you were born, there's a beam of light shooting limitlessly out into space. And then that's where your soul came from. So your soul had to pass through all the different energies of the planets, zoop, dunk, right into Earth. So depending on your location of Earth, the time, where the planets, the moon and everything was, will affect your personality. So that's the basic understanding of astrology and the mythology around it. So what do we have that's real or observable, detectable? So we have the different planets moving around, the energies, and we understand that where we were in that time. Now, if that's the belief system of that, what about where did our soul come from, right? So did it come from, because back then when this originated, they might have thought that our current solar system is really all there was, but now we know that there's galaxies out there, We got the solar system, galaxies. Further out, multiple galaxies. So we might have passed through a lot of different other energies. So you could say, okay, well, we don't understand those energies, so let's just look at the current ones we can understand. Now, this is where I think I'll start switching on to the other view of things. So there's a lot of different schools of thought around these ideas. So people might believe that physically the actual energies of the planets will change our mood because our bodies, as you know, water bodies respond to the different energies and affects our mood and all that sort of stuff, and affects our personalities and things like that. Whereas some people might just look at it as a way of understanding a system as a whole, and then depending on how that system, because everything works cyclically, understanding how that system relates to you in the current time, and then taking an action in that current time and working around that. Now, here's where we're starting to delve into the idea of the collective unconscious. And this relates to everything I've said before. So if you're just looking at astrology from a purely subjective, nothing outside you affects you, then you might say that the planets affect you in a physical way because, you know, they're big. But I mean, how do we even know that that's what is happening there? We obviously have to rely on our limited experience as well. And that's the thing about even things about science, unless you've done the experiments yourself, how do you really know what is happening? You know, have you actually looked at a brain scanner and seen neural pathways firing? It's just what we've been told and what we currently understand and what makes sense and all that sort of stuff, right? Now, looking at absorbing a system like the runes or the chakras or the ideas of how crystals relate and the idea of how astrology relates, there's the idea of the collective unconscious or the collective consciousness. And it's the idea that everything is kind of like this pool or kind of like this canvas that over years of human experience, we've made imprints in the fabric of reality, right? So through our imprints of what we believe certain things are, then without knowing, we still operate under those laws or under those ideas. Okay, so what does that mean? What's an example? So over how many years, if we've believed that there's been 24 runes, and each of those runes represents a different concept that represents our universe, our periodic table of elements. And over the years, we've been able to do things within those concepts and view those concepts as kind of like back doors to making the universe tick or making the universe work and the mechanics of the universe operate. So people have continuously been doing that, and they've carved these ideas into the framework of the cosmos, kind of like the way that water carves itself into rivers. So it might be a flat ground. We might have started with a flat ground of consciousness, no ideas. But somehow along the way, when humans have become conscious, or even maybe as animals, because animals, show a lot of forms of consciousness, quite intelligent. So they could be carving the collective unconscious with us, with the animals. That's another whole topic. There's really interesting things around that. And with these rivers that the water has naturally carved, now, of course, the water is going to flow that way. So you might think that over the years, we've thought of, a particular crystal as having a particular effect. Now, whether that really has that effect on us on a physical level, on a molecular level, or on this collective unconscious level, we've just developed this idea that this crystal means that. So naturally, for some reason, when we see that crystal, we feel like it's that type of effect on us. But how does that come into, where is that? Is that subjective? Because it doesn't really fit into that. But it's not really objective because you can't really explain it with science because there's no chemical reaction that's happening that should make us feel that way. So that's on that third level of the idea of this collective unconscious, or this layer and these streams that have been carved throughout the years that we don't know about. And astrology can be one of them. So you could view it as that the planets are actually physically affecting us. Or you could view it as, because we collectively believe that these planets affect us in this certain way, that they actually do. It's like that group placebo effect. There's been studies in isolated cultures where there's a local doctor there. So we'll have a Western doctor there, and one of these tribes people will come up to the doctor and say, the local shaman has pointed a bone at me. He sentenced me to death. I'm going to die. I don't know what to do. So the doctor, the physician, checks him out. Everything's fine. He said, look, man, you're fine. Chill out. Everything's going to be all right. Within 48 hours, he dies. They do an autopsy. He dies of cardiac arrest. They found nothing wrong with him before that. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe he had a heart condition. But it's really interesting. His belief in that he was going to die could have affected that. But add that to the collective belief of the tribe, and that will amplify that. So there's really something in a collective belief. Yes, in the way that it can affect your belief system, because obviously you live within that belief system, within that tribe or that culture, which we currently do without knowing a lot of the time. We have current beliefs within our culture. But what about the layer underneath all that? What if that whole culture dies, and then somehow that imprint of that belief system is left, I don't know where, so that another group of humans is left behind, but suddenly they pick up the idea of pointing a bone at someone for a death spell, and then instantly that person dies anyway because for some reason they know that's a death spell. So that's a really interesting theory. And it's one that can be really hard to scientifically approach. But it's a theory that I personally was super skeptical about initially when I got into all this. But the more I delve into these and practice, and that's the key here. We can theorize all we want, we can read about these, but those who have worked with Reiki, or those who have worked with runes or chakras or crystals or astrology, there's that deep inner knowing that this stuff is real. And I think it's healthy to be skeptical, but also just as equally healthy to at least not believe that they're real and based on what people tell you, but be open enough to learn for yourself. Don't dismiss things as saying, well, no, it doesn't, fit into my current belief system, so I'm going to dismiss it. At least if you're willing to especially voice your dismissal of these things, you should at least practice them for a while. Not just once. That's the thing. The first time I worked with chakras, the first time I worked with runes, the first time I did any of this kind of, woo-woo spiritual stuff, it didn't work for me. Some people it might have naturally worked, you might be naturally attuned to be able to do this kind of stuff. I wasn't. I was too skeptical. I was like, this is not going to work. What am I doing? This is stupid. I'm really hard to be hypnotized, for example, because I'm like, that's not going to work, so it won't work. So a lot of this stuff is, I really like to think of it as self-hypnotism. You start off with yourself. You first off, before anything is going to happen outside of you, you need to convince yourself that it's going to work. You need to hypnotize yourself. And that's the hardest part, right? How do you convince yourself that it's going to work? And that's why a lot of the time these things work better from external sources. So it's hard for us to, say, oh, you're going to be healed, or you're going to quit smoking, or all this sort of stuff. But if someone else that you believe has powers, or it can hypnotize you, or any of these sort of things, someone you give authority to, and they put a crystal on you, and they tap you on the head, and they sing a little chant, and they say you're healed, you're not going to smoke anymore. Yes, they might have some sort of power within them, but I think some of it comes from you as well. And I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure. I'd like to say I have no idea, but I'm starting to get ideas. But then again, my ideas might just completely flip 180 and, go on different bends. But I want to talk about it. I think it's so interesting to talk about it and to question these things and how they work. Because in my experiences, a lot of this stuff does work. And a lot of times it doesn't work. And I want to know why sometimes it works and why sometimes it doesn't work. And I know it's hard. And I've had people say to me, look, just accept that, it works or it doesn't work, and just like, no, I want to, funnel this into, I don't think, I liked Stephen Flowers, one of his first books on magic. He said that, magic is an art and a science. It's the art and the idea that, humans can create art, right? You can't make a robot. I mean, maybe eventually, but through a system, it's hard to create, art. But humans have such a variable system, this idea of consciousness, that we can create these things that are, off kilter or out of center, or, out of the usual box that don't make sense. Whereas science is always about making sense. It's, following systems and to a T and refining those systems over and over and over again. So yeah, I think it's important to, use our art and, woo-woo and love and all that sort of stuff to just believe that everything's going to happen. But that doesn't necessarily always happen. And you might just say, oh, well, it's the will of the universe, or it's the will of God, or I'm just trying to unravel that. And I'm going to always aim to refine my systems, because if I want something and I'm really delving into this, I want to be able to at least understand what's happening there. There's definitely things outside of my control, and sometimes things have happened that I didn't initially want or ask for that have been a benefit to me. So, and that's not going to stop happening. But I'm still going to seek the mysteries behind that. And I think that's what, to me, this podcast is all about, just seeking the mysteries behind everything, behind the curtains, behind the framework, delving down into what, and maybe not necessarily finding the answer, but I'm going to make you think about it. And if you don't want to, if you're not comfortable with what comes up from that, then maybe you need to delve into that more. And I definitely do. I'll notice when, people, it depends how people come in. Some people can be very aggressive with this kind of things, on both sides, whether, skeptics or too woo-woo. But I'm always trying my best to be able to explain things a bit better. And I've got this, for myself anyway, this constant fear of being misunderstood. I think that's one of my biggest self things that I'm working on, that I, especially around this magical concept, I really fear being misunderstood. I don't care what you think of me, as long as you understand what I'm trying to do and how I see things. And then as long as you see that, see me in the way I want you to see me. If you don't like me, then that's fine. I'm definitely not everyone's cake. But I just want you to not like me for the right reasons, if that makes sense. And of course, I definitely want you to like me for the right reasons as well. We're all humans. We want to be liked and loved. And that's what I want more of this to funnel into as well. I want to, the people that do all these different kind of modalities to respect and understand each other, because I find that a lot of people just say, oh no, this is the one and only way. My way is the only way. Your way is crap. Your way is not true. This is true. This is my truth. That might be your truth, but you have to understand that that's your truth, and that people may not be good at communicating these things. When people have these amazing spiritual experiences, they might come out and not make any sense or rationality, and want to tell it to the world, and they're just trying to spread this joy that they're feeling, whether it's religion or crystals or essential oils or anything that they really believe in. And again, for those people, if you're one of those people and listening to this, good on you. But remember, try to visualize how it would be for you if someone came to you with something you had no idea about, or even a preconception about. If someone once told you that crystals are complete and utter nonsense, and you grew up with that idea, then if someone is telling you all about their crystal collection, you're initially, without even thinking, unconsciously, you're going to be like, they're loons. They have no idea about the reality of life. But on the flip side of that, if you grow up in a family that uses them, and whether or not crystals have any inherent power, you believe they do, and you've had amazing effects on them, then what is wrong with that? So I'm not dissing on anyone who has beliefs in any of these modalities. Runes are my thing. I've, I've got friends that are into all these different modalities and more that I haven't even mentioned. I don't really delve into much of that stuff because I have mine. And that's the thing, when I talk about runes and all these sort of things, runes are just one way of doing things. There's so many different ways. I think it's one of the best ways to do things, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. I feel like everyone that, does their martial art or, does their modality thinks this is the best. And it's just, I think, the way we're going to be, and it's probably why we're good at doing what we do, because we think it's the best thing in the world. And that's amazing, and I love that. But people who are skeptical try to see it from the other person's perspective, and people who are so excited about their newfound powers and their, astrology and all that sort of stuff, maybe question yourself, criticize yourself about it, because it's only going to make you stronger in your belief system. Yeah? So any questions, I would love to hear from you, and I hope this has made a bit of sense and it just wasn't just another rant. And I think that will do for now. Love to hear more ideas for future podcasts. If you want to check out anything that I'm doing, or send a question, or send a conflicting ideal, or I'd love to hear. I mean, that's the thing as well. I'm going to make this regardless, but I would love to hear that it's helped you in some way, or people that are listening. Please let me know, and would love to hear from you. So runeyoga.org is the portal that will take you to everything that I'm doing. So www.runeyoga.org. My name is Daniel Cumming. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you very soon. Ryan to Rune.